Hey, what's up? How's it going? Welcome back to Hungry for Apples with your host, Faern. I have a very special episode for you. You know, I don't do that many interviews, and I get really excited when I do one. So that's what you have this week. And this interview is with a longtime friend, Ulises, and he is a main member, a founding member of the band Ozomatli. But this episode is not just about the band. This is about experiences, international experiences as a musician that he's had. And also there's some really good advice in here for young musicians. I'm really excited about this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Please, please, please send me any questions or anything that you have. hungryforapplespodcast@gmail.com. All right, thanks for being here. Enjoy the show. Hi. Before we get started talking, do you have anything that you want to share? Don't you have an album coming out, or didn't an album come out?
Ozomatli has a new album coming out July 15th called Marching On. We've been releasing singles here and there.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, we have Mi Destino, this album, this one cut with Be Real and Gabby Moreno, Be Real from Cypress Hill. We have we've released like at least 3 or 4 different singles, and all of them coming from the album, but the official album drop is July 15th.
Awesome. That's really cool. I wasn't sure what was going on because I've only seen a little bit on social media. I'm glad that I asked. So I have it. I have that in my mind now. That's cool. One of the main things that I'm so inspired by from you, besides the fact that I've known you my whole life at this point, is the staying power of the band. The fact that y'all have gotten along this long is pretty amazing. Is there anything you have to say about that?
I mean, the running joke in the band is that the band is the longest relationship any one of us has ever been in.
I think I've heard that joke.
Yeah, and not for nothing, it is probably one of our biggest accomplishments because most bands, you're lucky if you last 5 years, or 10 years, let alone now we're in our 27th year.
I was trying to figure that out this morning. I was like, is it 27? Is it 30? Yeah, like I'm doing the math.
27. And I was in college when I quit college to join this band. And I haven't looked back, Yeah. So it's crazy that we're still able not only to be a band and create music together, but not for nothing, we don't hate each other's fucking guts. You know what I mean? It's like we can still have dinner together and make each other laugh, and at this point we're family. And at this point, too, it's like we know each other's flaws and we know each other's shortcomings. So in certain ways, when one of us fucks up or acts a certain way, it's like almost like, oh, that's him, And so it's probably one of our biggest accomplishments, honestly, is that we're still a band and we're still creating. Yeah, for sure.
It's a super amazing accomplishment, especially for someone like me that's seen pretty much the whole arc from when I first saw you play. There were how many people? 15 people in the group. How much?
Yeah, I would. Do you remember where was the first time you saw us play?
Santa Barbara. I don't know. I want to say 98.
Okay.
I think. I'm not sure. Maybe 99. I really don't remember. It's a little hazy. But I remember there was just, even at the Fillmore, when you first started here, there was a bigger group. And it's when the core group, when you guys became that core group, was when I visually saw what the family was, like what you were just talking about, that accomplishment. It was like I could see it kind of starting out in a way once you got to that point. And I feel like that's, it's real. First of all, from my perspective, it's beautiful to see because I've been in the arts my whole life, and it's you don't see that. That's not a common thing. Is there a big lesson from that you've learned, like some kind of a life lesson or some kind of a takeaway?
If there's any life lesson to be taken away from it, is that like communication is something that needs to be practiced, and that like, you know, when we first started, we were already going through all kinds of problems and some heavy ones, and you know, our manager at the time, Amy,
I remember her. She was so cool.
Yeah, and I'm still in contact with her, even though she doesn't manage the band anymore. But I remember her suggesting group therapy, you know, and you know, at that point, you know, none of us were trying to hear that shit, but you know, but we did it, and we continued with it with different therapists, different incarnations of the group, and not for nothing, it set us up with the skills to at least be able to, when we do have problems with each other, that we can address them in a healthy way, you know, whether it's meeting together and being like, hey, you know, da 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 da, you know, I didn't like how this went down, or whatever the fuck, you know. So because of those skills, we were able to survive. You know, that's like one of the biggest things that helped us survive was learning those communication skills and those kind of tools that you need to, you know, break down any kind of disagreements,
conflict resolution.
Like, you know, yeah, conflict, exactly that, conflict resolution. So if there's one thing that we kind of, you know, use and learn from that, and because of that, it's like, you know, to me, having somebody mediate the conflict, or have a therapist or whatever there, a life coach or whatever you want to call them, I'm not afraid of that anymore, in the sense of like, I don't feel threatened by that, or feel like, oh, why do we need that, or any of those kind of like feelings, you know? So,
did you feel that in the beginning?
Oh, I mean, well, yeah, in the beginning, because we were all early 20-something dudes, and you know, our mentality was, you know, like, do your fucking gig, you know, man up, you know, shut the fuck up and do your gig, or whatever the fucking problem was just like, yo, like, what, you know, why, or, you know, whatever we were going through is just like, dude, just, you know, do your job, homie. But there was certain things that we dealt with as a band that were way more beyond than just manning up, or whatever kind of like, just kind of like just toxic fucking energy that we had inside of ourselves, you know? So yeah, you know, it obviously for the better. We're still here, and we're still able to talk to each other in a certain way that we can challenge each other, and yet not go to complete hell, you know?
That's awesome. I have a question. Were there other bands doing this? Because I've talked to a lot of artists and a lot of musicians, and I've never had anybody bring up group therapy. And I'm sure, I mean, it must happen, but
I you know what? We were doing it way before. I remember that Metallica movie came out, and everybody was like, oh my God, they're going to I was like, shit, we've been doing that for years. Sure, if I know of other bands that kind of like were as proactive as we were about it. And I know that I've I've suggested it to other bands. You know, I know other people in other bands that have, you know, deep rooted problems that are festering, you know, in their organization, that I've told them. I was like, dude, you know, maybe you need a mediator. You know, I don't even use the word therapist because sometimes it scares people off. I was like, maybe you guys need an impartial mediator to get in between you guys and like listen to our
Shit, you just broke up a little bit.
And to maybe call people out on their shit. Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying, like, maybe you might need somebody to call people out on their shit and to help foster an environment of resolution, you know?
Are they listening to you? Have any of the other bands gone forward with that?
I think one of the friends that I remember mentioning, I think they were kind of, yes,
they were thinking about it.
Thinking about it. Yeah. So, you know,
being in the creative world so long, it seems like this should be something more talked about. I feel like it's really cool that you bring this to people that you know, because, I mean, you know, they didn't tell us any of this kind of stuff in high school, you know, in high school for the arts, you know what I'm saying? And they were supposed to be prepping us. So it's interesting. I feel like it should just be there. Just this idea of wellness in the group.
You know, I mean, at the same time, you know, in high school, you know, I mean, they're just trying to, I don't, you know, at this, like, I guess, I don't know if they were trying to foster just you as an individual artist and just kind of promoting what you do, you know, to knowing that, like, sooner or later, this person might have to work in a collective of some sorts or a group, that maybe it'd be good to have them have those group skills. Like, I don't know if they were thinking about that.
Oh, no, not at all. You know, for you more maybe than us, you know, more for musicians.
Well, because musicians usually, you know, very few musicians just play by themselves. You know, it's just me, you know, and like, you know, usually you have to like learn how to play with others, you know, in a certain way.
It's kind of the point.
Maybe an artist, or maybe as a visual artist, you could be more kind of like, I don't need to depend on anybody else but myself to have that output, you know?
For having the output, but in order to get it anywhere, you do. So it's at some point, no matter what.
Yeah, true that. I mean, at the end of the day, you need a certain amount of level of people skills and social skills to be able to sell yourself, to be able to promote yourself. Because how many people do you know that were amazing musicians or artists that were really fucking good, but for whatever reason, either socially or in their skills, or they were just assholes.
Are we talking about me?
No.
No, I'm just kidding. I get what you mean.
I'm saying, like, you know, just like where they just could never get out of the hole of like, why ain't I the person? You know,
it's true.
Because, you know,
like, those are the ones that end up in obscurity.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many musicians that I know that, like, honestly, they should be somewhere else, but for whatever reason, they're not there because, you know, they were unable to either communicate or to sell themselves or just to appeal to other people. You know what I mean?
Some of them can't have a conversation.
Right. And if there's one thing that I've learned in the past couple of years, especially with the quarantine and everything with the pandemic, and me just trying to connect with the fans online, is that, like, it's beyond just your music and your personality. It's like fans are investing in you. They want to know what makes you tick.
Yeah.
So they're investing in you as an individual. So the more you can, like, communicate with those fans in a certain level, the more they feel invested in you and the more they want to basically support you, you know?
Yeah, it gives them something to care about.
Exactly.
Or something to connect to.
And also, exactly, to care about, to connect to look forward to have some sort of routine with, all that. Like I say certain things online that, like, later people will hit me up on in the direct messages and be like, "Oh my God, you brought that up and it meant so much to me." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Like, I was bringing shit up, like whatever. But at that moment, it was actually resonating in people's souls. And that's the kind of thing that, like, that I always knew that people invest in you in a certain way as an artist, but especially with social media, it's like extra that, like, people now want that insight into what makes you tick, and that insight to how they can, like, bond with you.
Yeah, they're looking for all kinds of stuff, and it's very interesting to see what the different things are that connect people, because it's usually not what you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah.
It's usually something totally out in left field, and which isn't bad. Like, it's not a complaint. It's just that I feel like a lot of people can acknowledge that they don't know exactly why they're doing certain things until they connect like that, which I think is actually really cool. Yeah. So let's see. Creativity. How did you? Well, I was about to ask about the Fulbright thing that the band did. Do you want to say anything about that?
About what in particular?
Didn't you go on a Fulbright tour?
Oh, well, actually, we were like cultural ambassadors for a minute, and so we were touring places and going to countries that, like, bands don't really go to,
Like where?
Our first big trip was Nepal and India. And after that, the success of that one, we ended up going to, let's see, I'll just go down the list of, like, places that we've gone to with this sort, in that span. We went to Madagascar. We went to Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan. That was a North African tour. We went to Myanmar. We went to Indonesia. We went to Thailand. In South America, we went to Argentina and Brazil and Chile. Went to Lithuania. We went to Mongolia, which was a trip. China and Mongolia trip. And yeah, like, some of these places, they, like, no American band had ever played there.
Right. Which place had the biggest response? I'm just curious.
There's a couple of them, I would say, as far as crowds are concerned.
Yeah.
Nepal was a big one, because at the time when we showed up there was a ceasefire between the government and the Maoist rebels. So, I mean, not to say that it was all peachy. There was still a lot of shit going on, but no one knew who the fuck we were in Nepal. Like, maybe 5 people.
Yeah.
So the only thing that people knew is that some American band was going to come through and play for free.
And it's you guys.
And it's us, and, we played in this huge field that usually is like reserved for huge demonstrations. And there was over 10,000 people there. They were like, this is the biggest congregation of people outside of any kind of political activity that's happened.
Wow.
People showed up. And the crazy shit is, I remember showing up, and the barrier for the crowd was like over 100 feet away from the stage. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And they were just like, well, look, dude, if the crowd doesn't dig your shit, or if there's too many technical difficulties, or they're just, like, not, feeling it, they'll just start throwing shit at you. And we're like, oh shit.
Oh my God.
Mexico City Part 2. So, but then we actually negotiated for the barrier to be a little closer, like 50 feet closer. And everybody dug it, and everybody had a good time. And the other one that was kind of crazy was when we played in Mongolia, in Ulaanbaatar. So this was during the age of Facebook, right? Where you had to put, where you're at. And Facebook at the time, you know, when we said we were in Ulaanbaatar, it had a default thing.
I remember this.
It said we were in China. So when
Bad.
Mongolian people saw that, they lost their fucking shit.
Yeah, they don't like that.
They already hate China.
It's not good.
The Chinese in China. And to the point where it's like, someone told me, like, if you give somebody a gift, make sure it's not made in China. I was like,
it's true.
Shit, okay.
Yeah.
So when Mongolian cats saw that shit, they fucking flipped their lid, and people were threatening us. Like, people were like, if you guys try to play here, we're going to fuck you up and throw shit at you and just like, don't like leave. And just, and of course, like, it's like, duh, we know we're in Mongolia. We know we're not in China. This was like some snafu that happened digitally on the website that fucked our shit up. So we had to like do a bunch of damage control and issue out press releases. And we ended up starting right there in the middle of, I mean, you've been there. There's a huge square in the middle of Ulaanbaatar where they have a huge Chinggis Khan statue overlooking the square. And we ended up starting the show jamming with Mongolian musicians, like throat singers and stuff. That way to kind of like be like, yo, like, this isn't like about like, this is about collaboration. This is about us appreciating your culture and coming here to soak it all in. We know we're not in fucking China, So
that worked?
Oh yeah. And there was like over 15,000 people there, and it ended up going off, so it was a good show.
They go off there. They
did go off, and we had a good time there. So yeah, there moments like that. We've had a few, but I would say those were the two biggest crowds that we pulled during our cultural ambassador kind of run.
When you went to all of these places, did you tour spiritual locations like temples and stuff like that, or did you not have time to?
Yeah, we would go to, usually what it involved was we would do outreach stuff. So, go to schools for music for kids, or go to orphanages, group homes, you name it, like just stuff that we would do, outreach stuff, and then plan a free show, outdoor free show for everybody to show up and enjoy the music. And in between that time, try to do as much kind of touristy stuff that we could do, go to temples, go to museums, go just check out the scene, go hang out with locals, try local food, listen to local music,
Which area had the most impression of that for you?
It's hard to gauge because all of these places were really special in one way or another.
Yeah.
But I would say that, like, musically speaking, I would say either India or North Africa were two big ones, because those were places where I actually like made an effort to go to like music stores. I remember I was in Alexandria, Egypt, and walking by this music store, and I was just like, I'm going to go buy some music, but I don't know what the fuck to buy, in certain ways. So I remember sitting there with the shop owner smoking cigarettes, and him just being like, you like this? Playing me stuff. You like this? You like that? Okay, I like that. I don't like that one. Okay, let me get that one. And then like seeing some young kids in the store, and I was just like, kind of like, what are you buying? Let me hear what you're buying,
Oh, awesome.
And then coming home with like, I mean, at the time it was mostly CDs, and then just like spending months trying to, marinate on them, listening to it, I did that too in India quite a bit, bought a lot of music from India, to bring home,
So do you think that those times influenced the future music a lot? You bringing in, having so much new exposure, because it was over a short amount of time. It was these trips were pretty close together, weren't they?
Like any music that I consumed on the road like that ended up influencing the band one way or the other. I mean, it's just impossible not to be influenced,
right?
Because at the end of the day, music is one of those things that you're never going to know everything, ever, ever, ever. And there's always another music scene that you've never heard or a style that you've never heard of. So I even remember when we went to like Madagascar, we got exposed to Malagasy music and that whole style. And it ended up that, we had a song called Malagasy Shock because our guitar player got electrocuted on stage out there. But that sound and that music had already influenced us. And then we had like Street Signs, which was one of the records that definitely was influenced by North African music and Arabic music.
Yeah, big time. I remember.
And then there was any one album I can point out things where I could be like, that was from our trip to this, or when we heard this kind of music, or when we heard this kind of music, yeah, so it definitely expanded our horizons musically.
That's really cool. That's so much at once too. So it's almost as if it was meant to be that big soup of information, take in, and where there must have been similarities across the planet that were like sound similarities that were maybe unexpected, things like that. I could imagine. I have a question about staying healthy all this time with touring in the band. How do y'all do that? Because I mean, you're all are relatively healthy people.
Relatively, I mean, in the sense of like, yeah, we're none of us have like, one thing for sure, the majority of the band is sober. So we went through that phase where, certain substances definitely were, destructive, to the band. And alcohol being one major one for sure, I would say, And so a lot of the band is sober. I'm probably one of the few guys that isn't sober because I still can have a glass of wine and, drink and I definitely still puff, but, hard drugs wise, I always kind of stayed away. Sure, I experimented with hard drugs and, hallucinogenics, but it was never something that like kind of like I got hooked on or thought it necessary to function. So, weed was just my thing, and I just puffed it. And for the most part, I could function and do the show, and I wasn't fucking up because of it. So one thing for sure is, yes, like most of the band is sober. And the other thing is too, is just like, as you get older, you got to just take care of the machine better. And
right.
one of the things that, is pretty evident, even in just something obvious, is that like, when we first started, there's a thing called a rider, which is all the stuff that like they put in the dressing room,
Yeah.
So back in the day, it's like very common to have like, I had Jack Daniels on the rider and I would have all kinds of shit on the rider. And just, nowadays it's like, it's all like healthy stuff, kombucha, fucking, like the fancy cheeses and shit like that. It's just like, it's just good food and good stuff that we put on the rider that way.
It's true.
It's like, no, there's no sweets, there's no booze. I mean, we do have sweets. We have dark chocolate on our rider, but you know what I mean? Like, even just in that type of stuff, we try to, and now, especially now that we're older, the grind of the road can definitely put a lot of stress in your body. So, whereas before things like, hey, maybe we should, sleep a little bit before the gig, or travel a certain way that doesn't completely fuck up our sleep cycles.
Right.
Sure, sometimes it still happens. Shit, like last weekend, we had 2 gigs in a row where we had to wake up at like 3 a.m. just to get to the next gig. Shit like that still happens, but now more than ever, people are kind of like, yo, I got to go take a nap. I got to do this. I got to like take care of myself. Exercise. Some of the guys in the band exercise. Some don't.
I was just about to ask that, actually. I mean, I remember a few times backstage at the Fillmore, Will Dog pulling out his phone. He's like, "I'm going to go to yoga," and he'd like flip through it real quick and try to find a class for the like right then. It's like I always loved seeing that happening, and there was always such an interesting dichotomy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, and people got into different kind of yoga, or just working out in the gym. Like Justin's a big workout guy. He's always,
aren't you a black belt in something?
Yeah, I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu like about nine. It took me about 17, 18 years to get it. And I've been doing jiu-jitsu now for like 19, 20 years, I guess. Since like, when did I start? It was around 2001, I want to say 2002. So yeah, it's been like fucking 20 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been,
well, that's
even
cool.
though, of course, with the pandemic and everything, it kind of, fucked jiu-jitsu up for a while. I've been starting to train again. I'm starting to like get into rolling again.
Good.
Just to get that thing going, and not only just for the health, but also for the mental. It helps with any kind of anxiety that I have about whatever's going on in my life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. I'm glad that a lot of you are exercising, doing that. It seems to be probably part of why you've been able to stay together so long. It's like people are taking care of themselves, and did that happen with age, or were some people already kind of into being healthy from the get-go?
Maybe not from the get-go, but as the years went by and people get older, because you got to think like our oldest member, I want to say, is 52, and our youngest member is 46. I'm the second youngest. I'm 47. So, we're at that age, man, that like like I said, you got to take care of the machine, because I mean, not for nothing, life is short, and we got to take advantage of every moment. And if I'm going to be around, I'd rather be around in a healthy state,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is so important. And I just, we've known each other so long, and we didn't care for a really long time about being healthy at all.
Well, who the fuck does?
No, you're right. No, I know.
Nobody cares. It's like, like, just give me all the drugs, give me all the bad food, give me all the, I don't care, staying up all night, doing this, doing that. Everybody goes through, I think, a little bit of self-destructive behavior.
For sure.
Maybe not everybody.
Well,
not everybody, but
some are worse than others.
Yeah, of course. But, being artists and musicians, it's very, very common. And I mean, it's very common for musicians to like have substance abuse or dependency issues, So it's not like this is like, oh my God, this is more like the same old story with a lot of people. So, if anything, we learned our lesson early on that we have to be able to take care of ourselves to a certain degree, And I mean, we had already a member, Crunchy, who passed away from colon cancer, like already it's probably been about maybe 15 years ago or something.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
And I grew up with that guy. So, I mean, sure, it's a really fucked up, circumstance that he passed away so young from it. But it was definitely, one of those things where it's like, like, you gotta watch yourselves, and you gotta like take care of yourselves.
It was kind of a jolt for you.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a jolt for me in particular, but it was, it was one of those things that like, a lot of people don't like going to the doctor,
no.
Like, or knowing that there might be something wrong with you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to know. But,
it's true.
not for nothing. It's like I'm one of those people that now it's like, yo, every year I gotta get my checkup. I gotta get my blood work. I gotta see what's going on with me, to see if there's anything fucking kooky or anything weird or anything whatever. And yeah, it's just life. And
Yeah.
sure, are there people our age who still don't give a fuck? Sure, there is.
Yeah, there's a
I know
lot.
plenty of them who are living, hard, and they're still living in the red, man, and they're still doing as much drugs as, or drinking and partying as much as anybody other 20-year-old. But in the same way, like the career of the band, I'm thinking longevity, and I'm thinking like I would like to be able to do jiu-jitsu when I'm like in my late 60s still, like, or in my early 70s. I would like to still be able to like have a nice piece of cake and enjoy it, and not have to worry about being diabetic, which runs in my family. It's really serious.
Yeah.
So I have to like, keep an eye on my sugar consumption. I have to make sure that, like back in the day, like we said, one of the first times I kind of got fat was when we were like recording in these studios, and they would stock up the fridges with just nothing but sodas, and I used to be a mad soda addict, and I used to fucking like easy, like in a session, it was easy to drink 8-9 sodas, in a sitting, because you're just sitting there and it's just sugar and it goes down so easy, that bite of that first crack of the soda, and you're just full of caffeine. And that's the thing with soda, it never really quenches your thirst. So you just keep drinking it and drinking it and drinking it. And shit, all of a sudden, oh, guess what? You just consumed about like a fucking, a whole meal's worth of calories just in liquid, and sugar, and the worst kind of calories too. So, like I don't really drink like sugary drinks anymore, and I try to like, try to watch what I eat. Of course I still like yummy food and things like that, but
less of it, just
like
less
that,
of it. You just less is more.
Well, the thing is that like I would like to be able to enjoy bad foods even in my later age,
right?
Where it's kind of like that once in a while, be like, okay, I'm gonna have that like super greasy burger, or have it, with soda or something, and then after that, go back to your routine of eating healthy.
Yeah, I think we should do this again sometime, personally, because I have all kinds of questions just about just different stories that you have and all of that. I'm particularly interested in all of this, like temples and stuff that you might have gone to, if you have any stories about them. Or
temples,
because you mentioned Nepal and India as a big part of your trips.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with in India and Nepal is, I mean, you just hit up nothing but temples, right? Like, obviously, India being a place that birthed so many religious traditions. I mean, obviously, Hinduism being the major one, but also Buddhism, Jainism, Islam is definitely represented in India. Yeah, like, you see all this stuff. One of the funnier, I think, moments was I was in Nepal at this Buddhist stupa, and I just there's actually a picture of me like hanging out on the top of it with this Buddhist monk, and we're just chatting away and shit, and just talking. And he was kind of bumming out on Chinese people. It was kind of funny. He was just like, oh, China. And I was like, oh. But I had this like whatever watch. And I was just like, hey, let me give you this watch, that way you can know the time, homie. And he like stood up and was like, oh shit. And he took me, he was like, come here, come on, let's go. And then he took me to meet the senior monk.
What? Really?
And and this monk ended up like giving me special blessings for my life and my family.
Awesome.
I was like, okay, cool, and then I ended up giving him a little bit of money. It's like kind of like a thing where you kind of like have to give them a donation for it or whatever. that was super cool. And then the other kind of trippy cool thing too is that the day we landed in Nepal in Kathmandu correlated exactly with the beginning of Shiva Ratri, which was
Oh my God.
the big
That's
Shiva
crazy.
festival. So they're like, oh yeah, it's Shiva Ratri. I was like, well, what the fuck is that? And they're like, oh yeah, it's like people from all over the country and in India come here to celebrate this shit. And not only that, but all consumption of cannabis is legal for that day. I was like, what? Like what?
Just
like,
the one day because Shiva's the guy.
Because
Shiva.
yeah, because she was down for the herb, So I'm walking around and there was a special place, like it was like a courtyard that they had reserved for the sadhus, right? The holy people, the dudes that like walk around, and and they were all posted up there, fucking smoking these huge chillums of herb. And I remember going in there and just like tripping out, like, whoa, like this is tough. And they're like motioning me, like, come and join me, and like just like I don't know who I ended up smoking with at that festival and just hanging out and just tripping out on the whole vibe because, not only is it like this courtyard full of like holy men, going off, the energy was already, but then it's like there's these huge speakers all over the city. They're just blasting chants and prayers. And then there's these funeral pyres all along the river of people who are like, so it was just like a surreal scene to be a part of that festival and to participate in it, and that one was definitely intense.
It sounds intense. That's so much at once.
Yeah. And for a moment in college, I was a religious studies major, so I mean, just to be exposed to all this stuff was like a huge treat to me. And these are the areas where like basically Buddhism started in, and spread. And so I had a blast being exposed to all this stuff and seeing it for myself. And I pretty much in all these different places, like Myanmar, Burma, I got to see one of the biggest, like stupa, Buddhist stupas there. Probably one of the coolest things of the city right there. And then, just being exposed to just what people believe in and what motivates their lives, what gives them direction, whether or not I agree with it or not, it's that kind of thing,
What is it about other people's beliefs? Like it's like seeing that human spark in them. It's like that. Is that what is the draw? I'm just curious because I have the same thing. Like I love when people are, going after the thing they believe in. Like it's so like it makes me feel so good. I don't even care what it is. So so I'm just curious, like what did you
because at the end of the day, it's what gives people direction and meaning in their life.
Because you could see the meaning that it drew them.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
Not only that, but it gives them answers to questions that we maybe might never be answered. What happens after you die? What does it all mean? Why are you even here? Like these huge philosophical questions that we constantly are wrestling with and grappling with. Is that where depending on what place of the world you are, there's a philosophy or a religion that is trying to placate those people and give them answers. So, like I said, whether I believe in it or not, I have to respect that this is what these people are looking towards for their answers, for their meaning, for their direction, Whether I'm in some Buddhist temple in Nepal or whether if I'm in Italy in the fucking Vatican or wherever the fuck I am, you know, this is what is driving people, you know, and or whether it's not even any kind of religious, you know, experience, whether it's just a human experience or seeing something that like, you know, blows you away in a certain spiritual way that is not even connected to any religion, you know, that's happened too before, you know, and or being in Cuba and seeing like ceremonies where people, you know, take on the spirit of the Orisha, become the Orisha.
They let you into the ceremonies. You've seen that firsthand?
Yeah.
Oh,
I've
awesome.
seen that, like where it's like, you know, like you see someone take the spirit and, you know, I mean, for lack of a better word, become, I guess, possessed or become the vehicle for that spirit. So, I mean, you know, it's crazy. You know, human beings, we're nuts, man. We're really fucking nuts.
Your view is uncommon though. It's like, but it's like that you want to see it and you're open to the fact that it's important to the other group. The more and more people are coming towards that idea, but they can't actually hold it. And you're someone that's been around the world, and you're like, it rings true to you because you see it. It's very interesting.
And the other thing is that like I have to like let go of cynicism in a certain way, because it's like, sure, all these things I could at the end of the day I could be like, man, it's all this bullshit. You know what I mean? You know, like, you know, because you know, I mean, you've known me long enough where I mean, I had a really cynical view of religion, and I had a really cynical view of Christianity growing up, especially when people were trying to shove it down my throat. And
well, you have one of my favorite stories from high school.
Yeah, like, but now I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's like just because I've gotten older and I kind of understand people's motivations a little bit more, or just what it means to them, you know, what it maybe, you know, again, gives them answers, directions, you know, whatever. It's like, at the end of the day, whether or not it's an illusion or whether or not it's bullshit, it means something to somebody. So I guess it's not bullshit. I guess it's something to somebody, I should say, that gives them something that I couldn't give them. So,
do you know what made you switch?
No.
The cynicism? Do you know, did something happen that made you see it in a different way? Because you said you had to let go of it. It just over time.
Let go of it. I think it's over time where you just kind of just like, you know, it's like, at the end of you know, when it comes down to it, it's like, even let's say we're arguing about religion and I say something that completely shatters your whole fucking thing, you know, most of the time as human beings, we're just going to double down. We're just going to be like, no, fuck you. You're wrong. You know, like, even if I told you straight up that what you might be believing is complete horseshit, right? But I'm realizing that that's not the strategy. You know what I mean? That's not like how you get to people, or maybe try to convince them to change their minds. You know what I mean? Because they're going to double down and they're just going to be like, no, you know? So I guess just in that, whether it, you know, and it's usually religion, politics, philosophy where this type of thing happens, because you're talking about people's whole view of life and what is right and wrong. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I'm realizing too, is that like sometimes when I would attack somebody's religion or views, they see it as an attack on what is right and wrong. You know, like, oh, yeah, you know, kind of like when I used to argue with Jehovah's Witnesses or some shit like that. It's like, oh, well, if you're against me, you must be down for the devil type shit, you know, like, and that's not necessarily my intention. It was more kind of like, well, can you see the hypocrisy, or maybe the certain aspects of how oxymoronic certain things in the dogma can be? They didn't see it that way. They saw it as more as an attack on their worldview and their morals, or what they consider right and wrong.
Well, because they have an identification.
Realize that, you know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you
No,
saying?
no,
You
no.
had to
What did you say? I
realize?
didn't hear you.
Oh, I was
No,
saying
no.
that they have identified with it. So it's such a big part of their identity that they're tied. It's almost like it's tied in a way where they're scared to cut that little bit loose in order to see that whatever it is could be expanded upon. It's like that's one of the things that I find so interesting about spirituality and consciousness and all of that right now is most people just want the same thing. They have their own specific perspective on all of it. And a lot of times don't really want to expand on it because they feel like expanding on it is saying the past is bad and that it's not a growth thing. So it's almost as if they can't cut that little bit loose in order to see that it brought them to a particular place that they're growing from.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. It's like those people got to see it themselves.
Oh yeah,
They
totally.
got to deal with it themselves in a certain way. Because it's like, I know plenty of people that religion has stifled them. I mean, I'm just honest. Like, honestly, I feel like it has stifled their life from experiencing certain things, from enjoying certain things. Because why? Because, oh, that thing is the devil or this or that. It's like, yo, like, wow, we're really going to be there. But at the same time, it's like, that's where they're at. And that's where, you know, how they see life. And so it's kind of hard for me to like try to convince them of something else, you know. So, you know, at this point, it's like, I'm kind of through arguing unless you like kind of really throw it in my face and want to like actually kind of have like a debate about religion or whatever. I don't engage in those type of debates anymore with people about like, you know, whether what they believe in is the one thing that is the one, you know, that is, you know, because like, let's face it, how many religions has there been in the world since the beginning of man? Probably hundreds of thousands, right? I mean, just look at Christianity and how many offshoots that shit has already, you know, like thousands, right? And they can't even agree with each other. So, you know, like, fuck, you know, like whatever people do is what people kind of are going to do. I'm kind of reminded of this story that I remember hearing about, supposedly like two different dudes came to see like the Buddha, and one of them was a big time, I guess, devotee to a particular Hindu god, and then he asked the Buddha, so like, is this real? Is God real? And Buddha was like, nah, it's all bullshit. And he walked away all tripped out. And then a hardcore atheist, and he's all
You
like,
broke
is
up.
God
Wait,
real? And then Buddha was like, well, fuck yeah, he's real. Oh, okay.
I got
Can you hear
you.
me? Hello, hello, hello. Can you
I
hear me?
got you.
Hello.
Just
Okay.
repeat
So the
from
second guy. So the
yeah,
second guy shows what part? What part did you miss?
that part where you're about to start in right now.
Oh, okay. So the second guy shows up and he's like a hardcore atheist and he's like, "Oh, is God real?" And the Buddha's like, "Fuck yeah, he is." So there was a monk near the Buddha that was kind of like, "Well, which one is it, dude? You know, like you fucking I just saw you give contradictory messages to both of these dudes. Like, what is it?" And his whole thing was just like, well, each of those messages were catered to the individual. One of them was so sure that it existed that he didn't see any other possibility, that I told him it didn't exist. That way he could look outside his circle for other answers. And the other one was so sure in that it didn't exist that I told him it existed. That way he could question his own doubt. So, you know, it's kind of like that, the way I kind of see it now. It's like, you know, I mean, you know, if you ask me if God exists or anything, I would ask you like, well, let's define God first, and let's define this, and let's like, what do you mean by what you mean? You know,
I love
and
it.
maybe I might agree with you, maybe I won't, but maybe I might. You know, so it's a trip. It's a trip. You know, but we've definitely been all around the world and have experienced, you know, every kind of belief that you could think of. Shit, I remember one time in Cuba, there was this dude that rolled up on us and we were talking, and then the dude was kind of like, I deal in the black arts,
Ha!
like, like evil shit, like devil shit. And I think he was trying to kind of freak me out a little bit. And I was like, really? Whoa. I was like, trip out. And then I said something to the effect of like, isn't it crazy though that how sometimes bad things, evil things can actually birth really good things, you know? Like things that might happen that are bad, but then the consequences of that bad thing make things better for all of us, like whatever you want to kind of examples you want to use in life that like, and sometimes, like they say, sometimes bad shit, the road to evil is sometimes, paved with the best intentions. Everybody has the best intentions and sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does, but these things are constantly feeding each other. So he was just kind of tripped out by that. He was like, yeah, you're right. Like sometimes like I'll do like an evil spell on somebody, but then it ends up like working out for whatever. I was just like, okay, trip out, eh? Like, it's crazy the things that motivate us as human beings.
It is crazy. You're right. I mean, a lot of the bad things I would quote, I don't like using bad or good, like, but all of the more challenging experiences that I've had, have given me more, more growth than all of the other things. Do you know what I'm saying? My computer just did something weird. I had to move the screen. I don't want to really get into it, but with all of the death in my family and stuff like that, like I've had to really overcome a lot of stuff really quickly. And I've learned more from that than, getting my art anywhere or any of that. And so, I mean, I guess that's fairly obvious, but at the same time, I don't think people realize the depth of what you can learn from something that you perceive as a negative experience.
Right.
Because oftentimes it's a perspective thing. I see this as a bad thing, so it can't have any good parts to it. It's really interesting that I see more and more people coming to that understanding, because that's like the basis of all of the consciousness work that I do is that. Like, I don't even call it spiritual work anymore, but
whatever experience it is, like it's how you take it. Yeah. And I mean, I agree with that, like there are those times in life though, that things happen where it's like, man, how can I find anything positive about this shit? Like, I don't think I can. Maybe there is something deep inside that I can come out as a lesson, but I guess that's the challenge,
or time, like
find that thing,
or letting it be for a while and then coming back to it. That one, I think, is those things that we spend so much time trying to figure out that we just can't figure out. Putting them aside for me has been valuable, because going back to them, they've kind of organized themselves based on experiences that I had after whatever that was.
Yeah. No, yeah. But I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to be here with all my friends. I'm happy that you're still in my life. And
agreed.
Because that's the thing, like friends and people around you that you love, are so valuable that, as we get older, it is harder to make friends too. It's like you got to keep the ones that you got near you and connected, and because nothing is guaranteed in life. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So if anything, whether I'm here or not tomorrow, at least I'll leave a great memory for the people who love me,
Yeah, totally. Is there a message that you would like to put out there right now, like just something off the top of your head that you think would be helpful for perhaps younger listeners, people in their 20s? It doesn't have to be to young people, but it's just what I thought of.
I mean, as far as just like career in music or just life in general?
Anything that comes up, because like, I mean, for you, you have, first of all, you're very inspiring, the things that your opinions that you've shared with me, and your experiences, just
As,
on your own and
as
the
far
band
as
and all that.
music, as far as music and the arts, the one thing I tell kids nowadays, because I don't want to be like life advice overall, because that's like
No,
one size
no,
fits
yeah.
all. But as far as
Applicable, relatable.
let's just say music. Fuck it, just straight up music.
Okay.
I tell kids this shit nowadays. I say this. I say, are you in this just to make money, like to get rich, get some bucks, and drive around in Bentleys? And if they tell me yeah, I say, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't do music then, because if it's all about the money and if it's all about you get chasing paper, then pick a different profession, dude, because music is a huge gamble for that. And if you really all about money, then like maybe you should go into accounting or real estate or be a doctor or whatever the fuck else that you know you're going to get money. If music is something you cannot see yourself not doing, if it drives you to the passion that you don't give a fuck if you eat cup of noodles for 6 months straight and you're ready to like fight in the trenches for your ideas, for your art, for whatever, ready to take a big bite of the shit sandwich for your art and for music, then fucking do it. Then do it. If you're ready to if money is not your motivation and it's really just about you love this and you can't see yourself doing anything else, then do it. That's what I usually tell kids nowadays about music, because not for nothing, being a younger artist and being a band, it's so much harder. I see it as an older person nowadays in certain ways. In certain ways, there's certain things about nowadays that are fucking cool, I think. Like, one being that back in our days in the mid 90s, it was always about getting signed, about having that distribution, about, you needed the machine to get your message out. Nowadays, it's like there is that possibility of you blowing up on YouTube or
Yeah.
becoming, um, popular or gain a huge fan base without the machine, which back in the day was really kind of unheard of. But the flip of it is that there's so much stuff out there and you could totally get lost in the void that, you might just be releasing music into this void and never get any kind of feedback or get no backup or no nothing. That it is a gamble, and especially with how labels treat younger artists, the way they give deals nowadays, where record labels basically want a piece of everything you have, where back in the day it was like, no, you can't have a piece of that. That's the band. That's sacred. You can't touch our merch money. You can't touch our publishing money. Like, what? Nowadays, like, labels want all this stuff, what they call 360 deals. So it's way different. And that's why it's, where maybe back in my day, you could be an artist and have something going. And it's like, here today, gone tomorrow, right? Well, nowadays it feels like with a lot of these artists, it's like here today, gone later in the afternoon.
It's true.
Like the shelf life of artists and the way things happen. Like, how many people I could tell you, like, 4 or 5 artists in just top of my head, where it's like they had a huge song for the summer, or it felt like they were blowing the fuck up. And then now it's just like the industry has basically sucked all the life out of them and used them. And then now that's it, The good thing with us is that we have this reputation of having this amazing live show regardless of any kind of commercial success or lack of it that we've ever had as a band, we have this amazing live show that has been able to translate and has set up a reputation for us. So where people go like, oh, Ozomatli, oh yeah, they put on a great show. We're going to have fun. Let's go see them. And that's kept the boat afloat for many, many years, you know, and thankfully we still have that reputation, and thankfully we still have a lot of fans who are willing to come out to see the shows. And we're every day I'm thankful and appreciative of all that.
It's awesome. The live show thing that you just mentioned, you know, the end where you go out into the crowd and all of that, that is very you guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's very you guys. Like I mean, I've seen bands try and do something like that before, and it's no, it doesn't really work. And do you think you've been doing that since the beginning, right?
Not straight up the beginning. Actually, it's funny because that whole thing with people who are listening to this, just, you know, what Faern's talking about is that at the end of the show, we usually go into the crowd and do a whole like samba thing, drum thing to like kind of like just be one with the audience. But the roots of that were more based on being competitive. And what it was is that I used to be in another band called Yeska. And
I remember.
we would Yeska and Ozomatli would sometimes play at the Viper Room together. So I was like in both bands. So I was like, whatever, I'm good. But there was this little bit of a rivalry going on. And one night, Yeska kind of blew Ozomatli out of the water that night. And Will Dog and Justin were really fucking like on some like, what are we going to do to get them back? And they thought about this whole thing where we would do a procession onto the stage and then off the stage. And from those kind of like more competitive, kind of like, we're going to fuck them up on stage. From those roots, it turned into more kind of like, more of like, you know, we're breaking down the barriers between performers and audience. You know, now everybody were one. And then not for nothing, we lead everybody to the merch table. And, you know, hopefully somebody buys a t-shirt, and then we stand around there after the thing and we, you know, take pictures, talk to people, sign stuff. We're really, you know, approachable, and, you know, whereas most artists, like right after the show, they're headed right straight back to the back.
Oh, absolutely. You know. They're boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Which is which I totally understand. They've just done so much, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but y'all just kind of added this extra thing that
some people have even said we're too accessible. We're like, dude, like anybody could just come up to you. I'm like, well, I guess we are, but for me, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you know, people realizing that I'm just as human as they are. I'm not. I know that certain artists need that illusion of like, you know, like I'm
space.
Different. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, after the show, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just going to go sit in my room in the dark. Like maybe they need that mystique. And I understand that because there's plenty of artists that I follow that are kind of like that, you know, where it's like, they're not about like signing shit for everybody after the show. They're not about shaking everybody's fucking hand. They're about like, they have a mystique and they have a mystery to them that is part of their whole persona. Yeah. But I'm just not like that. That's not me, and I've never been me. So
it doesn't seem like anybody in the band is like that.
Huh?
It doesn't seem like anybody in the band is like that. Y'all seem like you want to hang out on the floor. Yeah.
And you know, not for nothing, growing up, there were definitely bands like, you know, like even like a band like Fugazi back in the day, you know, like the whole idea of them charging only $6 for the shows, making their recordings cheap. I remember I wrote to them and they wrote back to me.
Totally.
They were, you know, that kind of like vibe really influenced me, because I was like, that's the kind of band or musician I want to be. That's not shining people when they come up to you. Like, you got to be on some ridiculously annoying, drunk asshole shit for me to be like, yo, you got to fuck off, you know? Like, even drunk people who are a little sloppy, I'm okay with that. Like, fuck it, let's take a picture, homie. Like you have to be super, super like annoying for me to kind of like be like, put my hand, be like, all right, fuck off. Besides that, the way I see it is that the fans and the people are your boss. They're the ones who are paying your bills. They're the ones who have been supporting you through all these years. So if they want to fucking take a picture, they want some shit signed, I better fucking do it, you know? And I better do it with a smile because they're the ones who are keeping me able to play music. I'm blowing into a big piece of metal on stage and I'm able to pay the bills because of these people. So
that's awesome. I love that. And you know who else has that kind of idea are the comedians. Comedians do that.
Mm-hmm.
And even the bigger ones are still doing that, and they say it for the same reason. So I really admire that when artists can, you know, still stand there and talk to people. But I also understand the people that need their space. Like, I feel like all of this is part of just having the arts that are in the world. You need every angle in order for it to shine. Like, all of the parts have to be apparent. And if we didn't have people that had to be reclusive, we wouldn't have people that everybody could hang out with. Like, it's just like, I feel like the dichotomy is very important. So I want to thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Maybe this will be a part 2 later if you want. It's all good, you know, but thank you to everybody out there. People who want to check out Ozomatli, you know, we're on every single social media platform, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, even though we're not as active as we should be on TikTok, but we're on there. And of course, ozomatli.com. If you know, we'll be playing near a town by you, you know, so.
Which you will be soon enough.
Yep.
So thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
Out there, people who supported us. Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Alrighty. That's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe everywhere you find podcasts and visit Faern on her website, faern.me. You can also find us on social media, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Mystic Faern, so it's mystic_Faern, and Hungry for Apples podcast. Again, thank you so much for listening. Bye now.